Alamance County is pleased to present the Alamance County Commissioners Meeting.
Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone to our September 5th meeting of the Alamance County Board of Commissioners. And if Mr. Byrd will do our invocation this morning, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Eddie. In recognition of the wide diversity of faiths that we have in our community, I'd like to offer a moment of silence so that each of us can pray in our own way, or not at all. And as we do, I'd like to ask that you please remember the victims of Hurricane Harvey, the responders down there, and the families. Remember, please, why we are here, so that this body can lead and govern our county government. Please remember the victims and survivors of human trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault, and those that are suffering from other forms of oppression, enslavement, abuse, crime, and social injustices. Those that are homeless and hungry, especially our children. Those that are suffering from mental and physical illnesses and the challenges of aging. And our first responders, our law enforcement officers, and our uniformed armed services personnel who put themselves in harm's way in order to protect us. So with these things in mind, let's please have a moment of silence. Thank you.
And good, let's do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda today, we have public speakers, and I have 6 folks that have signed up. And we just had a kind of idea of what we expect here in the meeting. And first one on our list today is John Thorpe.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. I'm John Thorpe, 624 West Davis Street, Burlington. Over the past year, I found myself disagreeing with the decisions made by this board time and time again. I often find myself at odds only on policy by you commissioners, but I still have the utmost respect from you commissioners because I truly believe that you make each decision based on what you truly believe is fair and what's equal in your hearts, and each one of you hearts, no matter based on gender, religion, sexuality, or race. However, on August 21st, Commissioner Sutton's remarks that lasted 8 minutes were dangerous. In his 8 minutes, Commissioner Sutton openly admitted that he discarded facts. He singled out another commissioner. He said he took pride in those who took up arms against the government. He quoted hearsay from a death from another human. He attacked the First Amendment, freedom of press. And lastly, he made Alamance County Board of Commissioners that you sit on a national embarrassment by calling slaves on a plantation workers on a farm. His comments are beneath Alamance County Board of Commissioners. Comments of this nature should never be taken in the hollow rooms of government, nor these people who make comments of this nature should never be sitting making decisions for each one of those people that you all take in your heart. So today, we the people of Alamance County are asking for Commissioner Sutton's resignation. However, we're not asking for his resignation because of these comments. We are asking for this resignation because he doesn't live by the policies he often enforces. One thing about the other 4 of you commissioners, you all have to live with the tax policy that I do not agree with, and I take that as pride. However, Commissioner Sutton, he doesn't own any property in Alamance County. He also does not live with his son, John, nor does he live in front of the Manderas, so he does not reside in Alamance County. So with this as a fact, someone cannot come around and make decisions and not live by those policies. That's where we disagree. So for today, we are asking for his resignation based on the grounds that he does not have Alamance County best interest in heart, yet he has Guilford County where he actually resides. Thank you.
Very well. Trina Harrison.
Good morning. My name is Trina Harrison, and I live somewhere between Eli Whitney and Pittsburgh, in the far southeastern corner of the county. Graham would be my closest city of residence. And I come before you this morning as a North Carolinian whose ancestors were Quakers and KKK members. And I come to offer my absolute support for the removal of the Civil War Memorial from the courthouse. It belongs in a cemetery or a museum or on a battlefield, but it has no place at the entrance to a place of justice. I urge you to apply to the NCGA for permission to remove the statue, and we should all be absolutely furious that the General Assembly assumes to know what is best for our communities and has removed our ability to do what is right for our community ourselves. I'm also happy to see that Ms. Gailey supports a monument to Wyatt Outlaw and urge you and other community leaders to begin a process for commissioning a memorial and gifting it to the county. I would urge you also to be sure that whoever leads such a process is African American. Finally, I urge each one of you to attend the community conversation Alamance after Charlottesville. Commissioner Byrd was there at the last one on September 7th at Alamance Community College main campus auditorium at 7 p.m. You desperately need to hear from your community about these issues, and the absence of the majority of you was noted at the first event. Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Longhill. Good morning. Morning.
My name's Mary Longhill. I've lived in our farm in Snow Camp for 36 years now, and we raised our 3 kids in this county. I was born and raised in the South, and at least half of my extended family and ancestors were Southerners. I'm sure that some of my ancestors owned slaves and fought in the Civil War. However, I support the peaceful removal of the Confederate statue in front of the courthouse to a history museum or a cemetery or some other appropriate spot. The statue was put up in 1914 during a time of immense oppression against African Americans, a time when they were disenfranchised, when segregation ruled their lives, where 2 to 3 black people were lynched by whites every week. At the dedication of this monument, Colonel Jacob A. Long spoke. He founded the Alamance County branch of the Ku Klux Klan in 1868. I would like to challenge you, the county commissioners, and all the people who support keeping this monument in front of the courthouse to acknowledge the painful and very racist history that surrounds it. Thank you.
Elaine Berry.
Hello, my name is Elaine Berry. I'm from lovely Mebane. I'm here to speak about the statue issue, but from a different angle, the intimidation issue. I believe in free speech. I believe in the right to gather publicly, but I also believe that permits for public protests should restrict open carry. In the newspaper, it was reported that the sheriff at a recent protest requested that a protester return his weapon to his truck. The protester refused to do so because it was his right to carry it openly. When I come into this building, I have to take my chapstick out of my pocket. When one group that's protesting is carrying weapons, it's clearly done to intimidate anyone not supporting that particular viewpoint. There are no squirrels, there are no rabbits, there are no bears, there are not even skeet in the immediate area. I don't understand why permits to gather publicly in Graham, our county seat, are granted to groups that are allowed to brandish weapons alongside incendiary flags and banners, while protesters in Raleigh are instructed in their permits that their signs cannot be supported by sticks. You can't even use a yardstick to hold up a sign. Thanks for your consideration of this part of the issue.
Next, Chris Faust.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to change the subject a little bit. In the past week, I've been a subject of some rock throwing about the school system. I'm a local developer here, live in Graham. developed somewhere between 200 and 250 lots in the last 3 years in Alamance County and surrounding communities. And Libby's back there, and just because she's here, Alamance County is one of the best places to work, to put stuff on the ground. But the school system, I hope nobody's in here, they've been very unfair. And I think we need maybe a little better communication school system to the counties and even the municipalities. I'm going to go to Graham tonight for the same thing. They acted like they were surprised of us putting these lots on the ground. And Ms. Simpson she said that we were asking for something beyond that. We were just asking to be treated like their new plan was. So we just think it's unfair, and we want to try to somehow maybe find a happy medium with y'all. Maybe, I don't know if somebody from the school system can be in some of these meetings when we're, when we're putting these lots up. Because like I said, Alamance County is a fair place to do this, but the school system, I think, has been a little unfair to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Next, Beth Lehman.
Good morning. I am a resident of Alamance County. I live I have a Burlington address. I want to thank all of you for serving in our county. I know it's a big job. I would like to say and talk about the last meeting where some commissioners passionately threatened to use our hard-earned tax dollars to replace a statue if it is vandalized. That, of course, is a choice the commission has to make, but making threats isn't going to calm the fire that has been ignited inside our county. People have noticed this statue and are thinking about this statue that represents, based on when it was erected and the war it memorializes, oppression, intimidation, and racism. Some of the commission has tried to make the statue sound nice by saying it represents peace and a family heritage that includes well-treated, happy slaves. These personal anecdotes are really not helping anyone. Maybe having priorities that include concern for people would help. It's time to face a community that is changing, and a community that won't accept intimidation. It's not going backwards. I'm sure that poor soldier on the pedestal would like to take a break from representing the fight for slavery. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for their comments. And now we will open it up for commissioner responses. Bob?
I'm ready.
You ready, Tim?
I am ready.
Okay.
I have a couple of things to say, if you don't mind, because I think the last speaker was more directed toward me. I think it's ironic to be characterized as threatening people when we're talking about enforcing the law. Saying that we have laws that are going to be enforced and that we're going to protect public property is not threatening people. That's just a statement of fact. And it's a response to people who have come to our community and threaten that they will do destruction if they don't get our way, or they will do destruction if they don't get their way. So when you respond to someone else intimidating you with a forthright and straightforward answer, that's not being intimidating and that's not being threatening. That's an appropriate and measured response to that. I also want to speak a little bit, very briefly, about the monument itself. Because I think a lot of people can have different ways of looking at the monument. Clearly, some people see it as a testament to racism, white supremacy, and division. Those are things that all decent people stand against. And in some certain way of thinking, we would think, well, if it bothers some people, why not just take it down? You know, it's just a statue, let's just get rid of it. But the truth is that there's a lot of different ways to look at the statue that are equally valid. You know, when you talk about, well, if some African Americans have to walk past the statue on their way to court to be a defendant or a civil litigant, also the Superior Court judge, who is an African American, he or she walks past it. The district attorney's office, they have staff who may be African American. And when you take the statue down, you deprive them of the opportunity to look up at the statue and think, in your face, you know, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. That's the kind of speech that you prevent. You also prevent the perfectly reasonable inference that it is a reminder of the cost of war. That statue is not just a general statue to commemorate or honor the Civil War. That is a statue that was put up by the women of this county to remember their loved ones who died because they were doing their duty, because they were doing things the best that they could. And it has got names inside that statue similar to the names that are on the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. And you know, we still have that sweet generation here of men, my father is one, who decided to serve their country and did the best that they could. This is a memorial to certain people, and
It was a rebellion.
Okay. With no comments from the audience, y'all have had your turn, so go ahead, Amy.
this is a statue that was put up I believe where I saw on the internet it said 1912. It cost $2,100. The women of this community saved their butter and egg money, their sewing money to purchase that statue to honor the people that they had cradled in their arms, the men that they knew that they raised who were no longer with them. And that generation was passing away and they wanted to remember them. And there is a great idea afloat in the community to honor another part of the history of Alamance County, and that is Wyatt Outlaw. He was lynched, murdered violently in Courthouse Square. And I've talked to a lot of people over the past, I don't know, 2 weeks, month, something like that, asking them what they think about that. And I feel very strongly that it's time for us to talk as a community about how to tell the full story and to remember other people. And we can remember other important parts of our community while not denigrating or casting disparagement at another person's point of view. So I guess, are we going to talk about that later?
We can, or we can talk about it now. Actually, I've spoken with the mayor, and it is a movement here to put a memorial at the Memorial Park because he was a constable, which is a law enforcement officer. He was lynched, and we honor our people that try to uphold the law here. So for those that say, you know, we don't want to listen to the law and go do things like it did in Durham, but we do honor that, and we honor our officers as well. And he was a law enforcement officer in this county, and we want to recognize that. So
I talked to, and he gave me permission to use his name or speak his name, Dr. Dre Bland of First Baptist Church on Apple Street, and he had contacted me last week, and we spoke about whether we could do a monument to Wyatt Outlaw. I think it would have to be done through really the city of Graham.
Right, the city would have to request that, but we would be supportive of that.
Most of there's two kind of different ways to honor Mr. Outlaw. One of them would be through getting a star for him on the Law Enforcement Fallen Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. There's some bureaucratic paperwork that has to be taken care of. One of those things is it has to be signed off on by one of the survivors of the fallen officer. And Mr. Bland believes that there's somebody in their community who knows one of Wyatt Outlaw's survivors, and they also want a picture. And he thinks they may be able to find a picture of him. So that has to be signed off on by the Chief of Police of Graham, we think, maybe. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important that the public knows that these discussions are underway. The other way that we could honor Mr. Outlaw would be through some kind of monument. Really, the county only owns the courthouse, I think, and the immediate area, like inside the courthouse circle. Right. So if we were to have a monument outside of that, which I'm not really sure, frankly, that there's any space for it, we have to work with the city of Graham and be sensitive to the fact that this is their town, and that we want to do something that is connected with their vision for what their town should look like. So I don't know where we go from here with that, if it's a matter of reaching out to the
The
city of
Graham City
Graham.
Council will be discussing it. I talked to Jerry this morning, so.
Okay, so that is an update on that. So I yield the floor to whoever. Thank you.
Sure I can go down?
Sorry.
I'm all right. I don't know where to start, but I'm going to start. I'm going to come back to your comments that you started with, but I'm going to start with the comments that you ended with. You don't know where I live, my friend.
No one does.
That's cute. I lay my head down every night at 2302 Roger Street. The Madeiras, to bring in names of my neighbors, and now you crossing the line when you start talking about my son. I can assure you of that. My son is John. I don't live with John. John lives with me when he's there. He has had a child and is with his girlfriend. He does not live at my house. I lease a house. Now, since when is that a sin and a disqualification for civic involvement? My father rented and leased houses in 3 states that we lived in: Virginia, South Carolina, and Alabama. And he ran the biggest industries in that town, in those towns. President of the Chamber of Commerce. Well, you say I live in Guilford. I'd like to see what proof you have I live in Guilford. Number one, I work in Guilford. When I first filed for re-election, I got a phone call that Alan Gant was going to prove that I live in Guilford. I want to see it. I want to see it. It's really beneath the dignity of somebody that ran for state senate and lost, and now running for city council. I don't know if you'll win or not, but it's beneath the dignity of somebody running for public office to go with such characterizations that you have no backing for, none whatsoever. Now, I don't know what else to say about that. My phone number is out there. If you had any questions about what I said in the last meeting, you should have called me. I would have been glad to have talked to you. But the phone calls that I get, people are cursing me out to a big degree, saying they hope I die, so forth and so on. I'll talk to anybody, and anybody that knows me knows I love to talk. But you haven't reached out, and again, for somebody that's running for public office at the state level and now at the local level, not to reach out to citizens of this community when they have a question, especially somebody that's in office, I think's bad. And I mean that. Now, I'm not going to rehash what I said. It's out there. I don't take any of it back. I know what I said. And if you put a time frame to everything that I referred to, clearly, in the English language, if you put a time frame to what I said, I was correct about my family. I was correct about my family. Now, if you want to talk about it, call me. We'll be glad to talk. I'll be glad to talk. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, you know, as far as resigning, I was elected in 1994. And to show you how this affects families in a good way and in a bad way, my son John, that you like to refer to now, but I'm going to refer to him. You better be careful what you say about a man's son. I will say that. But you can talk about me all you want. But let me say this. John was in the 2nd or 3rd grade when I ran for office at Andrews Elementary School. And I pulled up to pick him up at Andrews one day, and he came out to the car. And he was getting in the car, and there was an SUV sitting in front of me, and the door was open, and I knew that was the parent of a friend of his in the 2nd or 3rd grade. And he got in the car, and he looked at me, and he said, "Daddy." And he referred to the car, the parents in the car. He said, "They don't like you." I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the little boy had told him that in school, 2nd or 3rd grade. And I just happened to have a bumper sticker in the back seat of me running for office. And I reached in the back seat and I gave him a bumper sticker and I said, go up and give it to her. He took it and he went up to the car and he reached in the passenger's door and reached over and handed her the bumper sticker. And he came back to the car grinning, 2nd or 3rd grader. In all honesty, I think he knew what was going on. He understood the political backbiting. He understood how it can be. Now that 9-year-old, 2nd or 3rd grader, is now in his 30s. And when I step down from this seat, it's going to be in 3 years and 4 months unless God has something else for me to do. And that son, John, will be 35. So a lot of water has gone under the bridge and more water's got to go under before you see this old boy leave this seat. That's all I have to say.
Well, I have some things that I'd like to say.
Go ahead.
Regarding Mr. Sutton's comments, I'm at the last meeting, what you said. I'd give you the benefit of the doubt that you really meant no ill will when you made those comments. I personally found them pretty insensitive and insulting. You know, we've all grown up with our own prejudices, and I certainly have. And I think it's important that we all, especially we white people, come to grips with those and confront them. And really, there's help if you wish to do that. There's all kinds of discussion groups in this community that you can participate in. There's workshops and training programs about racial equity and racism itself. So I just think that it behooves all of us to try to learn more about ourselves, understand the perspective of others, especially those who've been oppressed in our society. So the monument is really a divided issue. And I would venture to say that if we took a poll in this community today about whether the monument should stay or whether it should be moved, I would say that probably 2/3 would vote in favor of leaving it and 1/3 would be in favor of moving it. But, you know, a lot of that is just due to ignorance, I really believe. I've talked to a lot of people since the last meeting, and just like Amy, I've done a lot of research and talked to a lot of people, attended that panel discussion that somebody pointed out. Some of the people I talked to, just off the cuff, I would ask them, do you think that monument ought to be moved? And invariably, and these are educated people, professional people that I know, they said, no, I think the monument ought to stay. It's history. But then when I get into a little bit about the context around the monument, they start giving some pause about that, and you can kind of tell that if they really had a better, more broader perspective, they might change their minds. So one of the things I did is I went to the library and read the Alamance Gleaner. Thomas, I think is that the predecessor to the Alamance News?
Right here.
So yeah, I brought mine too. And I wanted to see what the press said about the time that monument was dedicated. So I found it very interesting, and I tried to put myself in that moment in time when that monument was being dedicated. And 3,000 people, over 3,000 people attended that ceremony, and 73 living Confederate veterans attended that ceremony too. I thought that was interesting. There was a parade, there were speeches, there was live music by the Oneida Band, is that how you say it? And so where did that name Oneida come from?
Same
we have
place
the
the
Oneida,
mill came from.
Yeah. Because, you know, there's that Oneida Mills that's been, but one thing that I kind of asked myself, I wondered if any blacks attended that ceremony, and I expect not. Walter Boyd, another local historian, noted that those, and this goes to your point, Amy, there are a lot of people who lost their lives from Alamance County in the Confederate War, 236 in fact, and that was more than any other war before or since the Confederate War. So I mean, I can see where people want to memorialize the sacrifice of so many lives, local lives. But if you go back, even back to the times of the Civil War, this issue, even the Confederate itself was, people had divided opinions about that during that time. So there is a senior research scholar at Duke University by the name of Tim Tyson who points out that this whole notion of a unanimous Confederate white South is really a myth, because during the war it was bitterly divided. This state was. We were the last state to secede from the Union. At times the conflict in North Carolina was almost like a war within the war, he points out. Thousands of white North Carolinians took up arms against the Confederacy, and more refused to accept its authority. Thousands of black North Carolinians escaped enslavement and fought for the Union. Wyatt Outlaw was one of those. Governor Vance, the governor at the time, even declared that the popular heart has never been in the Confederate War. And after the war, the Confederacy was detested by perhaps half of North Carolinians. And then more locally, our local historian Walter Boyd essentially says the same thing, that Alamance County was initially against secession, generally despised the Confederate government, and were drafted into the Army against their will. So it doesn't surprise me with that division back then that we still have the division today. So I think that, as some of the speakers pointed out, we really need to look at the context in which the Civil War was fought, and also the context in which these monuments were erected. And just in case nobody understands or sees that, I abhor the notion of white supremacy. But that really is what underpinned the whole slavery movement and the Civil War. So for example, in Texas, many southern states, 4 southern states, when they succeeded, not only did they pass articles of succession, they wrote out declaration of causes for why they were succeeding. And I think Texas is a pretty good example, and I'm going to quote, "We hold as undeniable truths that the governments of the various states and of the Confederacy itself were established exclusively by the white race for themselves and their posterity, that the African race had no agency in their establishment, that they were rightfully held and regarded as inferior and a dependent race." So, right after the Civil War, there was, the blacks had more power. They started getting elected to office during Reconstruction, mostly in the Republican Party. In Virginia, there was the Readjuster Party, and they were making a lot of headway. But then white people, in the name of white supremacy, started pushing back. And that was illustrated with the lynching of Wyatt Outlaw in 1870. Governor Aycock, Charles Aycock, the quote, education governor, was elected in a white supremacy campaign in 1900. Here's what he said. He said, "When we say that the Negro is unfit to rule, we carry it one step further and convey the correct idea when we declare that he is unfit to vote. To do this, we must disenfranchise the Negro." And after he said those words, the legislature passed laws that really took away the voting rights of African Americans. 4 years later, in 1904, he says, "Let us cast away all fear of rivalry with the Negro, all apprehension that he shall ever overtake us in the race of life. We are the thoroughbreds and should have no fear of winning the race against the commoner stock." So this is white supremacy. So move forward until 1913, 1 year before our monument was erected. Silent Sam was erected in Chapel Hill. And Julian S. Carr, the keynote speaker at that ceremony, now he was an industrialist, and I was told that Carborough was named after him. I don't know that to be a fact, but I know that there's a Julian S. Carr Street in Durham that I park my electric vehicle at all the time, at the American Tobacco Complex. So Julian says, during his speech, "The present generation, I am persuaded, scarcely takes note of what the Confederate soldier meant to the welfare of the Anglo-Saxon race during the 4 years succeeding the war, when the facts are that their courage and steadfastness saved the very life of the Anglo-Saxon race in the South." So that's a pretty, I'm just trying to give context to these monuments. And then later in his speech, he brags that 100 yards from where we stand, less than 90 days perhaps after my return from Appomattox, I horsewhipped a Negro wench until her skirts hung in shreds because upon the streets of this quiet village she had publicly insulted and maligned a Southern lady. So then we have our own dedication, and as it was already mentioned, the MC of that event was Colonel Jacob Long, who was the founder in 1868 of the White Brotherhood, a KKK-like organization. That's the organization who lynched Wyatt Outlaw. He said, "It is well for us now and then to celebrate and recall the achievements of the great and good of our own race and blood." So I guess in context, this is a time of lynchings and KKK proliferation, intimidation, absolutely. This was the era of Jim Crow. This is when so many of the Jim Crow laws were passed. Just after, the year after our monument was erected was the release of The Birth of a Nation, the silent film, a 3-hour silent film in which blacks were depicted as rapists and criminals and savages. And we still have voter suppression laws today, I would say, to disenfranchise people of color. So Tim Tyson points out there are 100 Confederate monuments in North Carolina. There are no monuments to slaves that built our state, none for the Reconstruction government of the 1860s, which gave us our NC Constitution that we should still try to live under. And I think wisely he says, the history that we leave out of our public square speaks lessons far more profound than the message of the Confederacy. So the more I learn about our true history, the more supportive I am about either moving the monument to a more suitable location, or, as what was mentioned by some, adding to the monument, and I agree with Amy on this point, adding to the monument more context about the times, maybe about white supremacy, about slavery, about what the monument really is. And the more I reflect, the more I really realize racism, especially systemic racism, is alive and well in our society today. We really cannot separate the issues of racism and Confederate monuments because they are so closely linked. So I would just say that I'm about truth, most importantly. As I said at the last meeting, truth can be elusive. I really want to do what's right. I do not want to erase history, but I want to make sure that history is preserved, and I'm talking about true history for the sake that we don't repeat those atrocities in our past. There is a great op-ed in today's paper about true history written by a sociology professor at Elon. I would recommend everybody read that. I admit that I'm probably the only one on this dais who feels the way I feel. I am open to listening to other perspectives, just as I want others to listen to mine. I'm not a scholar, I'm just one person. I've had some great conversations with people that feel pretty strongly the other way, who bring up some pretty good points. So, as was noted, there are a lot of laws, federal laws and state laws that protect Confederate monuments. I really disagree with what the legislature passed in 2015 that restricts local governments for making their own decisions. So I like the suggestion that was made. Well, we could petition the state legislature to remove it. I would be supportive of that, or to move it, or at least maybe before we do that, what we ought to do, because this is really a very complex situation. Because just to say, well, we want it moved, is kind of simplistic. Where should it be moved? When? How should it be moved? And who should pay for it? And should it be augmented, as was suggested? Should we have a Wyatt Outlaw memorial? And where should that be? So maybe what we ought to have is a commission to really delve deeply into the whole matter and come up with some recommendations for this Board of Commissioners here to be able to move forward. But the more I learn and the more that I read and talk to people, the more I feel like this monument, something ought to be done. Move it, augment it to reflect the true history. That's why.
Well, let me say, I'm in favor of leaving the monument exactly where it's at. It's the history of our state and this area. Nothing needs to be changed. If it offends anybody, then you need to look the other way. It's part of history. We're not proud of our history sometimes, but it's still history.
Any more
I'd
thoughts
like
on
to comment in a positive way. Shock everybody.
There you go.
It took courage. I disagree, but it took courage for Bob Byrd to make his comments. It really did. And I commend you for it. This country is based on debate. We got our freedom based on debate. And I admire you for having the courage to speak out, even though I vehemently disagree.
We should have lunch sometime.
You know, I got to say this, because I left it out of my talk about Thorpe, Thorpe's comments. Harry Truman, and I'm not a big historian when it comes to past presidents, but Harry Truman, one of his favorite quotes was, if it's too hot in the kitchen, what is it, get out or whatever. If you can't stand the heat in the kitchen, get out. And I got to be honest about it. You know, you didn't let that bother you, and I'll assure you it doesn't bother me. And Truman also had another statement he loved to say. Give them, what is it? I'm not going to say the word heck, I'll say heck. He said, what was it? Give them heck, and they'll think, tell them the truth, and they'll think it's heck. But anyway, I commend you for having the courage to speak out on that. And again, I disagree, but that's what this country is all about.
Yep.
I have a little bit I'd like to say in response to Mr. Byrd's comments, and they're well taken. There are kind of two things that I appreciate them because I feel like it gives me a chance to clarify my thinking about the whole issue. And one thing is that everybody that you quoted is a man, and our whole context for understanding the Reconstruction, the Civil War, all of that comes from men, from what they have written down. And one thing that I remember is Mary Boykin Chestnut was married to a Confederate general. She wrote what was called later Diary from Dixie. She wrote a diary, and she talked about the burden of slavery and what it puts on the white women, that they have to live knowing that their children are playing in the yard with mixed race children who have their husband as the parent, and that the woman faces that indignity every day. Now, that is not to compare the white woman plantation owner with the burdens carried by the slave and the African American. That is way worse and way severe. The reason I bring that up is because we have very few glimpses into how women felt about the Civil War and about what was going on around them. I do believe that Frederick Douglass was taught to read by his master's wife. He was taught to read by the women in his household. I think that when you look at the context of the monuments, that the women put up these monuments, and what does it say on the monument itself? It says, this is a monument to honor the people who died. Pure and simple. Their valor, their bravery in going to do their duty. I think that it's important to recognize the women in 1912, 1914 did not vote. They couldn't own property. They were very limited in their ability to express themselves. And that's part of the context, I think, for the monuments. And I do not compare the struggles of the women with the struggles of the African Americans. That is totally different, and the struggles of the African Americans are far worse, and I completely recognize that. But that does not mean that there's not something about women's history in the United States that can't be explored. Then the other thing I wanted to mention was you talk about what the monument really is and the truth about the monument. And that kind of goes to me through the whole thing about it, and I don't feel like I've done a very good job of articulating this. That there are a lot of different ways of what the monument really is. Some people can see the monument as being a pillar to racism and white supremacy and the things that we abhor. And abhorring that, some people can see it as being something that they, in their hearts, approve of, which is, disturbing. Some people can see it as being a historical relic that helps us to understand where our community was then and where it is now. Some people can see it as being a glimpse into how were women able to express themselves in 1912 and 1914. What kind of avenues did they have to make their feelings about things known? And it can be seen as an expression of the cost of war, that war is fought by the common man who suffers from the bullets and walks into the gunfire while politicians are far away and rich men profit off of them sacrificing their blood because they're told to. Those are all different ways of looking at the monument, and when you pick one above the others, then that's saying this is the right way to view it. You squelch all the other ways of viewing it. And you're saying that these other opinions aren't important. And I think that is censorship. When you choose one point of view and silence the others and say this is the only way you can see it, you might achieve what you think is the intended consequence of saying we don't venerate the Confederacy anymore, but you have the unintended consequence of silencing all the other good discussions that can come from it. So that is why I support leaving the monument where it is, adding context to it, remembering the other things that have happened in our community, and that's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks to all that came and spoke today. Thanks for your civil discourse, and thanks for all the commissioners' responses. And we're going to move on from this, I think, and get into our agenda. Thank you, though, for coming. If you'd like to leave, you're welcome to. You did very good. All right, moving right along now, I would ask for the approval of our agenda for the day.
So moved.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
Thank you, Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda. Is there anything there that we need to pull and look at? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Next, we have a presentation from Workforce Development, Annual Report, James Bain.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
If I could, I've got some paper copies of our report I'd like to give you all.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Lordy.
I don't know if you all remember when I came here in June of last year. I had just taken my job as assistant director of the Workforce Board. I came from several years in operations in the Career Center, serving the public with unemployment needs, with resume preparation and job search, and was kind of thrust on into my position when my predecessor had to retire. So I've really been learning a lot and developing on the job, and there's a lot of things I've changed in this report, and I wanted to apologize for being late and presenting. Usually they present this report in June, and next year I will definitely try to be on time or earlier presenting this report to you guys. I just kind of want to go through the report basically. The very first page here talks about our career centers, talks about our NC Works online system. In NC Works, there's approximately 8 million people throughout the state of North Carolina registered with that. That's 8 million job seekers, employers. The whole system is about 8 million strong. Right now, there's about 130,000 jobs posted in NC Works online. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit that website, I would really ask that you go on there in some spare time and just see what opportunities are available on NC Works online. Next page is our table of contents. Right below it is our NC Works Career Centers throughout the Regional Partnership Workforce Development Board. As many of you know, we serve 5 counties, Alamance, Montgomery, Moore, Orange, and Randolph counties. We operate career centers in those counties and serve workforce needs of the commissioners in those counties. On page 4, there's a message from our board chair, Ricardo Romero. Next page is our board member list here and our mission statement on page 5. Page 6 is a message from me talking about the change that we have gone through in our previous year and getting new things implemented and getting new staff on board and trying to go in a little bit different direction than we've gone before. Staff directory on the next page. On the next page is some achievements throughout the program year. All 5 of our career centers were NC Works certified. We did develop a 4-year plan for the state of North Carolina, the NC Commerce Commission, and had it approved by the commission. We did bring on our new website, www.regionalpartnershipwdb.org. I would ask if you take a look at that when you get a chance. Next page here is our annual awards banquet. It's a really good time where we celebrate employers that we serve. We celebrate school systems that we work with. We celebrate, most importantly, our customers through the center. Many of them really have great success stories, and it's kind of hard to measure a particular success story to make sure that it qualifies for an award, but we really have some great success stories, and if any member has a chance, we would really love for you to come to our next awards banquet in June of next year. In the middle of the book is our program year budget. This year we did our report a little different. We color-coded our tabs for the counties that we serve, and Alamance County is in red. Our contractor for WIOA services, which is Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act services in Alamance County, is Richmond Community Sports Center. We work specifically with them and Division of Workforce Solutions over here in the Career Center in Burlington. I have brought our Career Center manager, Lisa Arnett, here to speak a little bit about individual services going on in the Career Center in Burlington. Our total budget throughout all 5 counties that we serve was $3.512 million. Out of those funds, we served 550 WIOA training clients, and I'm going to get a little bit more into detail about WIOA in a minute. We served 7,111 job seeker clients. We served 1,608 local businesses for a total of 9,269 customers served. Here in Alamance County, and all the counties that we serve under WIOA, we do a lot of training services for all types of training, from CNA, med tech, phlebotomy, nursing. We do 2-year degree training for associate's degrees. If a person comes into the Career Center and has completed 2 years of training and they qualify as a junior, we can do the last 2 years of a bachelor's degree training. We do licensures, welding certificates, CRCs, or CNCs, excuse me, CDLs. We do a lot of licensures for the public as well. We really have a real strong OJT program. And I want to tell you a little bit about what OJT stands for. Of course, it's on-the-job training. We work with local area employers to bring on new staff. Usually when a new person comes into a job, just like myself coming into this job last year, you go through a training portion where you accumulate skills. Depending on your skills gap, it could be between 3 and 6 months, before you learn all the skills necessary to operate in your particular position. With on-the-job training, we reimburse the employer 50% of their salary for the first 3 to 6 months, depending on their skills gap. And we have a formula based upon the skills they already have and the skills that they need for their job to come up with how long of skills gap and how long the training period would last. We have particular projects with different employers, bigger projects, and I want to talk to you briefly about a project we had here in Alamance County with Cambro and Mevin. In 2014, Cambro was looking at a variety of places to locate throughout the state, and they settled on Alamance County, and the Division of Commerce came to us and asked, if we would do a large-scale OJT operation for Cambro, which we agreed to, and it was a 2-year project with approximately a $102,000 budget, and out of those 2 years, we worked with Cambro to hire 21 new employees. And I will tell you, all 21 of those employees successfully completed 6 months of OJT. And out of those 21 employees, 17 are still working for Cambro 2 to 3 years later. 2 have gone to competitors here in Alamance County. 1 has gone on to a four-year college and sort of dropped out of work to be a full-time student, and the other one has gone to a stay-at-home mother. The project was so good, I actually went back to Commerce in June and asked for some additional funding to continue this project with Cambro, because I know they're building an expansion in Mebane, and subsequently we were granted approximately $35,000 additional dollars to continue working with Cambro. And I'm committed to do that with multiple employers here in Alamance County. I'm kind of, still learning the ropes about how everything works, working with economic development, but I want to build a closer relationship with economic development here in Alamance County, and certain projects where employers are looking at our county, I would like to be able to work with Commerce to commit a certain amount of funds to these projects to bring more employers to the area. I want to kind of move on to every county commissioner board that I present to, so they're not really worried about the whole area. They want to hear about Alamance County. And so
that concerns us mostly.
Yes, sir. And so I want to talk about Alamance County. In our new report, we sort of did a snapshot of the labor market overview in Alamance County for you to look at. I will tell you, as you know, there's approximately 75,500 individuals employed in Alamance County out of 79,000 in the labor force, which makes the number of unemployed 3,482 for an unemployment rate of 4.4. Down below that, you can see we took a sampling of advertised jobs here in Alamance County, and we ranked the minimum amount of education required to successfully work in those jobs. We pulled this sample on January the 11th, so the data is a little old, but it's still very applicable. Right now in Alamance County, out of this amount of job openings, 14% require no minimum requirement for education, 56% require at least a high school diploma or equivalent, 0.54% require some type of vocational school, technical school. 0.27 require 3 years in college or technical vocational school. 7.8% require an associate's degree. 18.2% require a bachelor's degree. 1% require a master's degree, and 0.2% require a doctorate degree. And Lisa can further expand on this, but what that is showing is, Alamance County is a manufacturing heart right here in the Piedmont. And many people think that, their kids automatically need to get a 4-year degree or master's degree to get some kind of competitive job. And really in manufacturing, you really don't. As long as you have a high school diploma and have some type of certification or some type of short-term training and vocational school that will help you to get some type of manufacturing credential, you can have a very lucrative career in manufacturing. I heard a young gentleman speak last week from Cambro. He's about 28 years old, and he makes fortune. He makes a lot more money than I do, I can tell you that, and very lucrative.
Get on that training track.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Down below, the employment wage statistics for Alamance County, on an average, is 17.83 cents an hour as compared to the state level of 23.2. That's a little troubling. It's about $5 lower than the state average, and we really want to try to work with our school systems, with our Alamance Community College, and with different training providers to try to get those wages up. That's pulling back and forth. That's a struggle that we all go through, is how do we get our average wages higher? And I can assure you that's one of my top priorities, is to try to bring our wages higher for the county. Over on the right hand side, it shows employers by the number of job openings. And this, like I say, this is as of January 24th when we pulled this data. Cone Health was one of the largest employers for job openings in our system. LabCorp, Alamance Burlington School System, and then it goes on down from there for private employers. There's some demographic information here about particular jobs, the top 10 occupations here for Alamance County, listed by sampling the job openings. As of January 21st, there were 1,326 job openings in Alamance County, and the top one by far is nursing assistants. As the baby boomer generation continues to age out, our skilled nursing facilities continue to gain in population, and with that generation moving out and moving on into different levels of care, it's really caused a drain on nursing and CNAs. And so at that time, there was 332 nursing assistant jobs. Then from there on down, it was all production, team assemblers, production workers, all other, warehouse workers, laborers and freight, material movers, production workers, helpers, textile knitting, textile winding, pretty much all till you get down to tractor trailer and CDL was manufacturing. I believe the last information I saw in Alamance County was approximately 14,000 manufacturing jobs here, and it's growing every day. Next, there's some individual success stories here, and I'm not going to read through every single one of them for you, but there's some really good stories how we touch people's lives every day. And this is what interests me the most. Working with people. That's what I've done for years in the career centers throughout this region, and there's no better, more rewarding work for me to impact individuals' life. They may come in as a dislocated worker, have lost their job for, maybe 20 years, and that particular individual doesn't know how to do a resume on a computer. They don't know how to use NC Works online. They don't know how to do applications online. And that's one thing I really like, is helping those individuals to get their skill sets up to where, they're marketable in our society. As with youth coming in, especially disadvantaged youth, low-income youth, to help train them, to get them the skills they need to transfer into a career, to get them jobs. And it's, as I'm sure you all are very aware of, it's a circle. The more people we get employed, the more tax base we have here in Alamance County. And it's just exciting for me to serve individuals. I told Lisa, and I've told all my career center managers, I really want to start going to the career centers, each one of them at least one day a month, and working the career centers. I like working the front desk. I like working the resource room. I like helping individuals. Lisa is going to come up here, if you don't mind, and give some specific up-to-date data that was pulled on Friday afternoon about Alamance County and the number of people we're serving here at the Career Center.
Thanks, James. My name's Lisa Arnett. I live in, as the telemarketer says, me bang. Positively charming. I'll throw their cute logo in there for them. I've lived here since 1994 when we relocated with my family. I've had the pleasure of being the Career Center manager now for, oh Lord, 7 years. Time flies when you're having fun. I just want to first thank the county and the public officials for their support. I see a lot of you at some of the things I go to. I try to partner with all our partners here in the county. We're at the Career Center. We're considered a one-stop operation. We have people in there from Alamance Community College who stay in the center, who help people with resumes, who help them on the computers. For those who come in and say, I don't know nothing about their computers. We have people who come in from VR to help our citizens who have special disabilities. We have people coming in from the senior operations to help our people that may have challenges because they don't dye their hair. So we've got a lot of things going on. We reach out to the community. We work closely with the Chamber of Commerce when we recruit new businesses in the area. One of the first questions they ask after where's the land, they ask where's the labor. So we try to work closely with our Chamber of Commerce. We also work closely with our school system. I am on the Educational Council. I believe that's our pipeline. My husband laughs and goes, you work real hard to work yourself out of a job. He goes, if there's nobody who needs a job, you would be out of a job. But I believe there'll always be somebody wanting a new job. So we work really closely with the school system, trying to align programs with what we believe are the needs of the employers in the area, so that we're not studying something that we don't need, that we're studying things where they can get a job, where they can be employed, where they can build a future here in Alamance County. I'll just give you a couple numbers. I'm not a numbers person that much, because a lot of what we do is not numbers. But we did see over 1,000. We had 1,000 people register new in our system last year. We gave over 5,000 services to those people. We gave over 54,000 services to those individuals. We created over 12,000 services for our employers. I'm very employer-minded. I believe that our employers they provide our opportunities. So we work very, very closely with employers, not only on the OJT contracts, but just in general, trying to figure out ways we can help them. We give them wage and labor information. They sometimes will call and say, I'm paying, $10 an hour. Is that enough to pay this kind of occupation? So we're constantly working with employers, wanting to give them information, trying to help them attain labor. We're at probably the lowest labor level since, I'm going to date myself again, in 2000. So, it's a real struggle for a lot of the employers out there to find qualified workers. So we're constantly working. We have anywhere from 2 to 6 employers who visit our center every week, recruiting, trying to find labor. We're trying to help them find that labor. So we feel very positive about the way Alamance County is going. We want to be part of that, and we thank you for your support.
Thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Certainly, Mr. Sutton.
You mentioned educational relationships. Dr. Worrell down in Asheboro, you know her?
No,
Terry
sir.
Worrell, you know her?
She's on the workforce board.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. She used to be the principal at Page High School in Greensboro.
Oh, okay.
If I'm sure that's her. It's got to be her. I didn't know she was in Asheboro though. What's she doing in Asheboro?
She's over the school system.
She's superintendent?
Yes, sir.
Is she really?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah. She was special.
She really is, and she's been real helpful with us achieving our certified career pathways. I didn't really want to go into all the deep details of what we do, but the NC Works Commission in Raleigh kind of sets up performance guidelines for all the workforce boards in the state of North Carolina, And one of our performance guidelines was every workforce board in the state of North Carolina has to achieve 2 certified career pathways. We just were certified for our 4th one in August, and we have a 5th one slated for September to go before the commission review team. But Dr. Worrell has been very integral in helping us.
Next time you talk to her, mention Page High School, see if she doesn't light up.
I sure will.
And I want to, and I do have a question if you're can come back.
Yes, sir,
All
absolutely.
right, but before you go, you mentioned me Bain. Down at Clemson what day was this? Yeah, Saturday morning before the game. Clemson was staying at Holiday Inn in Anderson. And I was there, and I went into where they were taping the players, and Coach Hatfield, this was the coach that was there before, I guess before Sweeney. I'm not sure about that. But I went in and sat down at the table with him. We were drinking coffee, talking about the game. He said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Burlington." And he said, "Yeah." He said, we're recruiting a player up there by the name," and he mentioned his name, last name was, he said, "Me Bain." And it was a horse of a ball player at Cummings, and his last name clearly was Madden. And I told him, I said, "Look, if you won't have any hopes of getting this guy, you better learn how to pronounce his name." And, he got a kick out of it, but he called it Me Bain.
That's how we know if it's a telemarketer.
Yes, that's right.
I had a question,
Yeah.
a couple of comments. First, thanks for mentioning Cambro, because that was one of the companies that we provided a pretty good economic incentive package to recruit them to come to this community. And so I'm glad you're facilitating the success of their being in our communities.
They've been a pleasure to work with.
Yeah,
They're very fun. That's right.
The second thing is, I was kind of curious about the job openings and the minimum educational levels. I'm surprised that the biggest number there is just a high school diploma, and I'm also surprised how low the associate's degree requirement is, and it's even lower than the bachelor's degree, because I keep hearing from economists that the jobs of the future really aren't going to require that many bachelor's degrees, but a whole lot of associate degree level employees.
To be honest, I'm going to date myself again, and this is a little known fact. We need the same level of 4-year degrees in our economy as we did the year I graduated from Carolina, and we're not giving that yet. So, I mean, it has remained constant. The level of bachelor's needed has remained constant. What has changed and will continue to change is that transition from a long time ago, you didn't even think, when I first started in Burlington back in 97, a lot of the jobs didn't even have to have a high school diploma.
Okay.
You know, y'all remember that. Now it's almost all, as you can tell by, I mean, we have people who, you know, that's one of our really referrals off to encouragement of people to get GEDs or high school equivalents, because their opportunities are so limited if they do not have that high school diploma. That's one of the things we really stress. But you are correct. The shift will be, and part of the numbers kind of are, you know, fuzzy on that. And the reason I say that is because it is what the employer says is the minimum. What it doesn't say is what they put in the description, which is like they may say, "I've got to have a high school diploma, but I prefer somebody with a so-and-so welding certificate or so-and-so CNC machining certificate." That doesn't, those numbers really aren't indicated because they didn't say it was a requirement. They said, "This is what I'd like to." They made it a preference instead of a requirement in the job listing.
And where is the Career Center?
We are at 2640 Columbine Lane, which is, everybody know where the K&W cafeteria is.
Awesome that.
We're right behind the Ramada Inn, the Cutting Board Restaurant. There's that one little strip between Mebane Street and 95.
Across from Dick Shirley there, isn't it?
It's, well, we're over, if you go right behind the Cutting Board Restaurant, there's a road right beside the Cutting Board Restaurant and the Ramada Inn, just one little strip.
Next door, the old unemployment office
used to be.
Yeah.
We're right behind there. They, our landlord built a brand new building about 6 or 7 years ago. So we have a very nice new facility. We have a 16 computer training lab in there for our customers, that they can get training in our center via, like I said, our partnership with Alamance Community College. We also have a career resource area where just anybody can come in and use a computer, which is very popular. You know, Alamance County doesn't have a lot of people don't have computers still, unfortunately. You know, we all think we're wired, but some of us aren't wired yet. So it allows a lot of our citizens computer access who normally wouldn't have that. So I invite any of you to come anytime. We're there Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, and you would be welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thank y'all for what you do, and thanks for the work you do with the community college. I see Scott Queen's on your board there.
Yes, sir. Another very integral member.
And there's a lot going on there, being a trustee, and I went to a trustee meeting a couple weeks ago, and they actually had some panelists talking about job development in our state, and I think it was down east, they were discussing how the various counties got together and worked to bring the development in by training the people, and that's what it's all about.
It sure is.
Let me ask my technical question, if I may. Is there any analysis or analyses done on temporary workers versus full-time in your questionnaires and surveys and so forth? Percentages or numbers or whatever?
Yeah, in this particular information here, the bottom chart with employment wage statistics is specifically for full-time workers. If you'll see that little asterisk down there, and pardon me, I don't have my glasses, but it looks like it says assumes a 40-hour week worked year-round. That's specific to full-time workers, 40 hours a week. This other information above it is subject to part-time work, day work. You know, it's subject to any kind of workers. Because if you take away, and I had a county commissioner in Montgomery County ask me that too, they said, your labor market statistics is not matching with what our labor market statistics is. And I said, well, I'm going to defer to yours. But in NC Works, it splits it out where you can get part-time statistics or full-time statistics. So we do analyze both.
Okay. Forgive me, are the numbers here though? Okay, give me an example, if you would.
I can specifically give you this number right here at the top where it shows our 78,911.
Okay, now which page are you on?
Page 12.
12, I got it.
Yes, sir. Up at the very top. The number right there, area labor force, that's specific to anybody that's working. If they work 1 hour a month, they're counted in these numbers. This civilian labor force number of 78,911.
Right.
And number employed out of that labor force is 75,429. That's any time, if they work an hour a month, a week a month. But if you break that down, now I haven't pulled those numbers out specific to full-time and part-time. I can get that information and send directly to you. I can just tell you that this number right here is based off any workers.
I like to have that because I think there's a big trend in America to go with a lot of part-time, temporary, and I think it's important to know. I know a job is a job is a job.
Right.
But, you know, the temporary numbers, in my opinion, are swelling. And the process used to be, if I'm not mistaken, that a temporary was only, 30 days or whatever, but people are using temporaries all year long.
Yeah, they are.
For the same job. And in my opinion, I don't like that. And I think we should recruit totally full-time jobs the best we can, but know the numbers on temporary. And if somebody has a policy of pushing temporaries. But if you could get me those numbers, I'd appreciate it.
I'll be glad. Do you want me to email that to Tori?
Well, the whole board, if you would. Or
Absolutely.
Tori, and then she can get them to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just like to know the numbers.
Yeah, I think that's true. A lot of companies do that because of the benefit package.
Exactly.
I mean, I know of a situation, and I'd like to just tell this. I know of a situation where a person would be told, I can name the company, but I won't. But they use temporaries, and they're working for a major firm and doing some work for them. Let's just put it that way. And they use nothing but temporaries. And a temporary literally would be told, come in and we'll let you know if we can work you that day. Come on in. We'll let you know if we can work you. And that temporary, I know the person, would walk 2 miles to get to the business and then be told, we don't need you. Now, that shouldn't be something we accept in our society as far as work, labor, and so forth and so on. And I bet you the percentages are higher than we're even thinking, because this firm is right in the middle of Burlington and uses nothing but temporaries and treats them, in my opinion, terrible. And we got to be above that. So I would like to know these stats.
I will get them for you. Yes, sir. And there's one thing, before I leave, I want to tell you, we have veterans preference in our career centers, and we're trained from day one. If a veteran walks in the door, we drop everything and go straight to serve our veterans, because they served our country, and we want to make sure that we serve them priority.
Good for you.
Very good.
Good for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next we have Mark Danley going to tell us about the Buster Site Farm.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I've got a slideshow, if I could have it stand just a little bit there, just, that'll work. Okay. So we've got this Buster Sykes Farm in Medman that we're developing a demonstration orchard. Now, I wanted you to be up to date with what we're doing out there. And I've got a map. It's a little hard to see where the location is. So the green star is where the farm is. So it's about 2.5 miles off of 8540, coming off of 119 below Hallfields Church. So it's on Turner Road. So we're excited about the location. It's close to the highway. It's easy to get to. We think in the future we can do some regional programming out there because it's easy to find. Can't really see, but on the left-hand side up there, Alamance Community College, they actually have a farm on Jim Minor Road, so within a mile of where we are. And so we're working together. So I've talked to Liz Riley, who's department head there in the horticulture department, and telling her what we're going to do and what they're going to do and work together. There's no reason for them to plant an orchard if they can come use ours. There's a picture of the farm. So this was donated by Mr. Buster Sykes in 2004. Gave this to Rhett Davis. It's about 170 acres. Rhett worked to get this title held by the Ag Foundation, the NC State, so will always be in agriculture use. Mr. Sykes had no family. He did not want this farm developed for housing. He always wanted in agriculture use to be used for agricultural demonstrations. We'll do forestry classes out there, 4-H activities, master gardener things. Most of the land is wooded. They had it timbered in 2008, and those proceeds are being held by the Ag Foundation. That's what funds all of our operations out there. You can sort of see there's a piece of woods there, pines that was not timbered, so there's mature pines left for a picnic area. Most of the farm is pine. There are some hardwood spots that was timbered and allowed to regrow. So probably next year or two, we'll start having some classes, talk about pre-commercial thinning. We'll have Rhett come out there and do classes and talk about timber harvesting and things that you could do on a commercial forestry basis. One of the things we're working on is a shooting sports site for 4-H clubs. So shooting sports is the fastest growing 4-H segment, and I brought Taylor Jones here if you had questions about 4-H. We now have 2 4-H shooting sports clubs in this open field right there. We put in a road and built a 12-foot berm so they can do 22 rifles safely. We've coordinated with the sheriff and CCOM, so anytime the group goes out there, they call CCOM and tell them they're out there practicing. So if a neighbor calls and reports gunfire, the sheriff does not have to send a deputy out there to clear the call. We can clear right there with CCOM. We call them, tell them we're there, call them, tell them we leave, everybody's safe, and that works out very, very well. We've have done some 4-H groups out there with tree ID and bird watching. So lots of things. We're just really kind of getting started with this now. There's a stand of mature hardwoods right in there. This is the Hall Creek. They could not cross the creek to timber that, so that's mature hardwoods. It could be 4-H campsites. We're not really sure yet. We hope to get a bridge across there at some point in time. So this is the front field that we started to develop first. So the Wildlife Commission has leased 18 acres actually on this side right there. So Rec wanted the Wildlife Commission to be out there, so there's somebody there 5 days a week, so a presence on the farm, and they've at least 18 acres there. So that right-hand side of the driveway is theirs, but they're not concerned about using that property. So orchards on the cleared field, we may plant pecan trees or native persimmon, bigger trees over there. We're working with the Wildlife Commission to have a wildlife stewardship plan. So we may have a pollinator garden, we may have a wildflower planting to encourage birds. Not really sure what that will be on that side. It's still a work in progress. Here's our initial planting plan. So we're trying to get a wide variety of plants out there. And the main purpose here is to teach pruning and training techniques for fruit. People interested in growing their own food, they want to have fruit trees and small fruit, but they don't really know how to grow them. And so this will be an effort to show them how to do that. We'll have some trees that are pruned every year. We'll have some trees that are pruned maybe every 5 or 6 years, because most people will go buy a tree, plant it, and they won't prune it until it gets to be overgrown and a real mess. So we'll have trees out there that will be similar to what they would have in their homes, and we'll show them how to prune them at that point in time. This is the planted list. So we've got lots of different varieties, lots of different rootstocks. We'll have master gardeners out there collecting data as to bloom dates and possible frost damage, pest susceptibility of some of these plants. We'll look to see how they grow. We'll do some research on fruit quality. Our county manager's already volunteered to help me do some taste testing on fruit quality out there. So
I'll come with him.
Okay, all right, very good. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I doubt there's any site anywhere in North Carolina that has this diversity of plant species. So you can go to some research farms and they'll have some apples and peaches. They probably don't have pawpaw, or they may not have blackberries. So I think in the years to come, this is going to be a real asset to the community. I'm going to go through some pictures pretty fast of just how the development took place. This is fall of 2015. We had to do some grading out there, clear out some trees and level the ground a little bit. Starting in the summer of 2016, I got one of our local farmers, Michael McPherson. He has a farm on Mevin Oaks Road pretty close, so he brings his equipment over there. We'll get the field plowed up, get rid of all the weeds and sweet gum stumps that were out there. We had to put up a fence. Huge deer pressure out there. If you're going to have fruit, you've got to have a fence.
A high fence.
So this is 8-foot tall fence. The fence in this 2 acres cost us about $16,000, but you just have to have a fence. So they built the fence. It was quite an operation there to put the fence up. It was interesting to watch because you start pulling this wire, so the front line here is over 300 feet long. How do you pull fence wire tight over 300 feet? Well, they hook it to a skid steer and pull it. So it's a fascinating operation. We'll have a really good fence. I don't think we'll have a deer problem because of that fence we've got out there. Okay. So as the process going on there, then we had to subsoil the field to get the soil prepared to grow. It's not great soil. It doesn't drain very well. We're trying to increase the drainage as best we can. Then we're tilling the field, getting ready to seed. So this is fall of 2016, and we've got the guys out there seeding the field. They did this right before one of those 5-inch rains we had in September 2016. And I went out there really expecting it to wash, but they did such a good job of preparing the field, it didn't wash at all. Got a real good stand of grass out there. So this is fall 2016. We decided to drill a well because we had to have water for the farm, so we got very lucky. Our well is 500 feet deep, but we've got 50 gallons a minute, so we can water the entire orchard at one time. It's kind of expensive, but we've got the water we need to keep our plants going. There's a process of putting in the irrigation system, so we have irrigation in the orchard. You've got to have that. People think that once you get these trees planted, they're pretty much on their own. But if you don't water them, you won't get the growth and you certainly won't get the fruit.
Is that a drip irrigation?
Right, so a micro spray. So every plant now had a picture of that. The irrigation system going in there, then we've laid off the beds, so we had Brad and some of the fellows from Soil and Water go out there. We want to make sure our rows were straight and parallel, and so they helped us lay out the lines. We're tilling the beds before we get ready to plant. There's not going to be first in there, so we also have trellises that they built inside the fence. So we've got muscadines, bunch grapes, blackberries, all on trellises, and so we had to drive posts for that. This is where they're putting in pine bark fines, so we've got blueberries out there. Blueberries need a well-drained soil, so we're trying to improve the soil here for planting our blueberries, putting the fines out, tilling that in. This is Eddie Love, so I'm fortunate to have a great group of master gardeners. I cannot do all this by myself. Eddie's a landscape contractor and has a lot of nice toys. And so Eddie came out there and dug a lot of the holes for us for planting the trees. That's a whole lot better than a shovel. Yeah. So they got Eddie and his wife Pam. That's one of our newly planted apple trees. Most of our planting was done in the first couple weeks of March. So we're kind of lucky that February and March was fairly dry. We could do a lot of field work without getting too late in the season. The bad news is that about March 18th and 19th, we went down to 19 degrees. And so some of the plants that we planted suffered some cold damage, but that's one of those things that just kind of happens. More master gardeners, so they're working on putting in the micro spray irrigation for all the plants out there. So I had a big crowd of volunteers and really could not have done this project without them. There's over 300 plants out there. It was planted, and it took quite a bit of time to plant those. So they're raking out the blueberry bed, getting ready to plant the blueberries. That's the crew planting blueberries. So again, volunteers are critical to getting this done, and more so as we go forward into the future. More of the irrigation crew. And that's it. So it's a micro spray for each tree. So it just sprays out a little circle, probably about 36 inches in diameter. So we've got adequate water. So if we had plenty of rain early spring into the summertime, but as it got into July, it quit raining, and we've had to water weekly since then. But, it works very well. More of our volunteer crew. So this is right after we got through planting, so this is kind of middle of March, and everything there is mostly just whips, so little sticks 24 inches tall and no branches. Getting into about the middle of May there, everything leafed out. We lost some trees to the cold, but for the most part we had pretty good livability with our plants out there. This is now. So the peach trees now went from 24 inches to about 6 feet tall, about 6 feet across. They've grown very, very well. Very pleased with how they've grown. Another angle of the peach trees in May, and again, here it is last week. So getting really good growth on our trees. Like I said, some of these will be pruned every year. Some of them will be pruned every 3, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on what our protocol is. We've got apple trees. This is a high density trellis. It's not easy to see the wires. It's 5-wire trellis. So a lot of our commercial growers are going to this now. So these are dwarf trees, dwarf fruit stock. Will only get to be about 10 feet tall. So if you have a semi-dwarf apple tree, it's going to be 15, 18 feet tall. It's hard to pick. It's hard to prune. All of these will be 10 feet or less, and they're planted about 6 foot apart versus 20 feet apart. So a lot more trees per acre, a lot more production. So homeowners probably won't do this, but it's just something for people to see and recognize what can be done. That's those same trees in August, so getting good growth on those. we'll actually put some apples on those trees next year. Normally, you won't crop these things until the 3rd year, but because of the way they have grown, we'll have apples next year on those trees. Here's some dwarf apple trees, and these are on a single metal stake. So this is something that a homeowner could do, dwarf and rootstock, and these trees could be topped out at probably 8 foot tall, so easy to pick, easy to prune, certainly more suited to backyard growing than it is big scale. Here you got on the left-hand side, we got some Oriental persimmons, so a little different crop. There on the right-hand side are sweet cherries. So sweet cherries may not do well here. A lot of times the fruit will crack as it starts to get ripe. I mean, a very high sugar content and absorbs water and cracks, but we're just going to try and see if it will work, if it won't work. It's just part of the experiment. Blueberries in the middle, they didn't do well. They got frost damage. We've got a row of, these are seedless bunch grapes. So we've got 2 rows of muscadines, but I want to try some seedless bunch grapes. Normally they don't do well here. The plants have grown very, very well, and we're hoping to see that they'll grow some grapes. They're certainly a little bit more tasty than a muscadine. We've got blackberries in the background. There are some figs, so lots of varieties of plants out there that we can work with, do lots of experiments and show people how to grow stuff. Not sure what we'll do. We've considered having like a monthly orchard walk. So once a month, have the public come out there and just walk through the orchard, see what's going on, maybe taste some fruit, and get them interested in what they could grow in their own homes. Hard to see there, those little trees, those are pawpaw trees. Pawpaws are an understory tree. They will bear better in full sun, but in the first year or two, they don't really like full sun. And I didn't realize that until July because they weren't growing. I found out that they needed some shade, so we built shade structures for the pawpaws out there. So about 1 o'clock they get a little bit of shade and helps their feeling some. We've learned that Japanese beetles like cherries and plums and grapes a lot. They will eat on peaches and apples and blackberries some, but the cherries and plums they really do like. So we're getting new information, learning lots of things as we're going along through the process. Okay. So just quick little review there just to let you know what's going on. Do we have any questions?
I'm curious about A&T's farm over there. What do they do? Is it agriculture or
yes.
Mainly?
Yeah. Small farms primarily.
Okay. Is this how close to what they're doing is this?
They do have an orchard. They're mostly concerned with vegetable production.
Right.
And they do have some fruit trees, but not to this extent.
Yeah. How big is their farm over there? I see it. I just don't know how big it is.
It's pretty big. I'm not sure.
Much bigger than this one.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. And we talked about trying to do some row crops out there, but we only have probably less than 10 acres cleared. Right. And you really can't do soybeans or wheat or anything like that. So the orchard fits well with the open space that we have right now.
Looks great.
Now, the State College, are they participating with this at all, or?
Well, I've got a specialist there that I call. For the most part, it's
you.
It's me and my master gardener. Yes.
Okay, I got one suggestion.
Sure.
I watch the informational channel, and I watch you on there.
Okay.
But a lot of times, y'all don't film what's on the screen very well, and I'm having trouble figuring where to cut that tree at.
We'll have to talk to Scott about that. But Scott's done a great job of filming those presentations, so yeah, we'll work on that.
Good information on
Very
there
good.
that you guys are
Good.
doing.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Mr. Haygood, you have a request from the Circle K.
I do. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here before you this morning to present a request that you consider expanding the sale of alcohol hours on Sundays. You do not have to make a decision today, but we wanted to make sure you were aware of this request and gauge the board's feelings. As you know, North Carolina Senate Bill 155 allows cities and counties now to adjust and expand the hours that alcohol is available to be bought on Sundays, beginning at 10 a.m. We have a request that's in your package that was submitted to our office by Circle K, asking that the board take this up and consider it. This expansion applies to sales of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages. So if the County Board of Commissioners were interested in taking this up and wanted to pass an ordinance, because that's what it would take, the approval of an ordinance, that ordinance would only apply in the unincorporated parts of Alamance County, not in any of our cities. We have had some cities approve this already, but if you pass and approve an ordinance, it would only apply out in an unincorporated county, and it would be an ordinance that subsequent boards could revoke if they wanted to. So if the Board of Commissioners is interested in taking this up, we'd work with the County Attorney's Office to come up with an ordinance that we would present to the board, expanding the sale of alcohol on Sundays to 10 a.m. That would come before you at your September the 18th meeting. So let me tell you a little bit about how it would work. We would bring you the ordinance at the September 18th meeting, and that's only if you tell me here today that's something you're interested in. If the ordinance can only be adopted at the first meeting on September 18th if it was a unanimous vote. So the whole board would have to vote unanimously for the ordinance to be adopted at the first meeting. If it's not a unanimous vote at that first meeting, but it's not defeated, then we would bring it back to you again at the next meeting, and you would have to vote again. If it passes, then it would be in place. There isn't a public hearing or a public notice requirement for you to take this up. I was talking with the county attorney. We would suggest you consider that. You may want to consider having us go through the public hearing process. That would give the public opportunity to come and speak and talk to you about how they feel about this ordinance.
So definitely need a public hearing.
Yeah.
Yes. I think Mr. Albright and I would both suggest that you, if you're going to go down this road, that you take that as part of the process. So we'll try to answer any questions that you have about it. You're not voting today. If you give us guidance, we'll bring you back an ordinance that would allow you to have that discussion on September 18th.
I'd be in favor of moving forward and having the public hearing.
Yeah.
Same.
Of course. Two questions. You said unincorporated. Right now, if a business is in an ETJ zone of one of the municipalities that have approved it, what's the deal there?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if Mr. Albright.
That would be covered as part of their jurisdiction.
Right. All right. All right. Second question. I was under the impression when this thing was lobbied for in Raleigh and probably paid for by money of distributors or people who sell alcohol or whatever, it's a money deal, profit. That it was just mixed drinks, open consumption. In other words, I had no idea. Are you saying to me that if you go to a grocery store and it's not in an incorporated area that you can't buy a 6-pack of beer at 10 in the morning?
Not unless you adopt this ordinance, not in Alamance County.
Are you positive about that?
Yes. This is an expansion.
What I don't understand is why they didn't separate the two. Because there's a big difference between being able to sit at a bar at 10 in the morning out here in the county and getting a mixed drink versus going to the grocery store and buying a 6-pack of beer at 10 in the morning. I mean, there's a big difference, in my opinion. I don't understand how that was never separated. It's just sorry legislation, if you want my opinion. But what's new? All right.
Well, it sounds like there's interest in having the ordinance brought to you September 18th and also setting a public hearing for that date. So we will proceed that way and invite folks to come and give you their thoughts.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. You got anything else you want to add to
The
your
only
reports today?
The only thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, is we will have the September 11th memorial dedication on September 11th. I believe that's at 11 a.m. here at the County Office Building. So hopefully you'll be able to attend. I think we've got a very nice program lined up. The majority of the program will be up in this room. So I think we'll have a fairly good-sized crowd, but then we'll go downstairs for the actual unveiling and a moment of silence.
What day is that?
I believe that is Wednesday. This is September the 11th.
It's on the 11th.
Monday. Oh, sorry.
It's coming Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Commissioners, anything you want to add to comments to that?
One thing, at the last meeting I mentioned that I rolled off the board of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners serving District 11. Well, I got a call from the new president of the association, Commissioner Brenda Howerton from Durham, and she asked me to be chairperson of the Health and Human Services Steering Committee for the association. It's one of 7 or 8 steering committees. And so I agreed to accept that, so that puts me back on the board.
So
Well,
we don't.
we're glad you're there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Keep it under control.
I will do my best.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to say something. That when I spoke earlier, I did not in any way, shape, or form mean for those earlier comments that I made to minimize the experiences of slaves or the people in the African American community in the South. I did not mean to sound insensitive to them, and if I did, then I truly and sincerely apologize. We have this morning Dorothy Yarborough and Dana Courtney here. We have different political opinions, but I have tremendous respect for you ladies and also for the other people who were here this morning to articulate their sincere opinions, which I respect, and I'm glad that we live in a society where we're able to do that, to talk to one another. And if I said something that you ladies found offensive, then I truly apologize to you because, you know, I respect your position in the community and I value that very much. I was just attempting to highlight the diversity of ways that we can view things, and that when you endorse one interpretation, then that can be viewed in different ways. So it's an emotional topic. It's easy to misspeak. We can have something come out that's not what we intended, and I just apologize if I said something that you all found to be offensive.
Okay.
I'm going to tell a story.
Okay.
Do you mind if I tell a story?
I don't mind if you tell a story.
We're getting old, and I love to tell stories. All my students say, "Has Mr. Sutton told you any stories yet?" But this is true, and it shows you, in my opinion, what happens, how people can feel, and what motivation you'll be given to maybe fight something. When I got out of college, I worked in Greensboro. And this company hired me, and they thought, oh, he's a city slicker, you know, he can't do what we got to do, you know. I was going to have to knock on doors in the worst part of Greensboro, late at night, to get loan payments. You'll never be able to do it. Well, not only did I do it, but I did stuff that had never been done before, as far as success. We had a phrase called zero out. What zero out meant was, let's say you had 1,200 accounts, which is what I had, and at the end of the month, you had the goal was to have 1% delinquency, 30 and back, 1%. So that meant I could have 12 and meet company policy, and they'd be happy. Well, at one office I worked on out by the Coliseum in Greensboro, I was zeroed out. I didn't carry a soul. It shocked everybody. They got on the phone. You ain't gonna believe what Sutton did, blah, blah, blah. Well, then I went over to Eugene Street office. When the manager left High Point Road, he went over to Eugene Street, and I said, you know, I'd like to come with you if I can. He said, all right. So he brought me over. And I was what was called a CSR, Customer Service Representative. And we had some rough accounts. Auto dealers, and so forth and so on. So I went in at the end of the month, and my numbers looked good, and I had about 3 or 4 more I could go out and pick up the payments on that morning and make it even better. I had a supervisor, and he lit up a cigarette. He was beside himself. And he went over to the past due, the current accounts tubs, and he was just thumbing through them. Just like that. He was frantic. And what he was trying to do was find some that maybe weren't, that I had hidden. I didn't know people were that way. You know, I didn't grow up in that environment. So I walked back. Anyway, I took my collection book. I was 22 years old, 21. And I took my collection book and went back to the wall to take the keys off the wall, take the company car, and go out and get a few more. And my supervisor, that was frantically looking for some, that Sutton's numbers couldn't be right. He said, where are you going? What are you doing? I said, I'm going to go out and pick up a couple more payments. No, you're not. No, you're not. Go back up there and sit down. And we never had a crossword. But it was curious. It was obvious he just didn't want me to get better numbers. And I was tore up over it. That people could be that way to people. So I got my keys and I left the building. Walked out the back door and everybody was staring at me. I left. And my mom and dad were at a motel in Greensboro at the time. And I went over to where they were. Knocked on the door. And they weren't expecting me. And I walked in. I'm not going to lie to you. I was crying. I thought, how can people be this way? Stab you in the back, undermine you, characterize you in any way but the true way. And I told Mom and Dad what was going on. They said, why are you out here? I said, you ain't going to believe what's going on. I said, I'm knocking them loose up here, and I got somebody trying to just almost say I'm a liar. Blah, 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 blah. My daddy didn't say much. You know what my mama said? She said, you get back in your car, and you go back up to that office, and you do what you know you need to do. Irregardless of what they're going to say to you. You know what you're doing. That's all I had to hear. She said, get back up there. Get back in that kitchen. And I did. Walked back in that office. Took my keys up to my desk, which was up at the very front. Reached in my drawer, got my collection book. Went straight back to the wall. Took the keys off the wall. Got in the car. Didn't say anything to a supervisor or my boss that was telling me I couldn't do it. And I just left and went and got those payments. Came back in. And they were all standing around talking like, yeah, man, yeah, what's going on? And so I just turned the payments in, went back to my desk, and I sat down. I thought, fire me if you want to. But I do it my way when I know I'm right. Well, I'm sitting at my desk, and George Mulligan, I'll never forget, God, I loved it, man. He taught me more about banking and finance than any man I've ever known in my life. Smart man. I'm going to end this. I know I'm probably going too far with some of y'all, and that's all right. I've only got one chance to tell you this, I'm going to tell you. I think we can learn from it. I think we can learn from it. That's right. And George Mulligan called me. Tom was back there in the back in the office. That was my boss. He was smoking a cigarette, all red-faced, and I just lit it. And George was our branch manager. Never met a better man in business and all. And we shut the door, and I sat down, and he said, Tim, he said, you know, you got to, in life's way, God, he had a hard job that day. He said, you got to realize Tom's your boss. But he looked over at Tom, and he said, but Tom, you got to realize Tim is no yes man. Tim is no yes man. And it has always shocked me that people would do to people what they'll do to further a debate that's in their favor and so forth. Or it happens in politics, your professional life, it happens in your personal life. But I'll never forget my mom saying, get back in there and do what you know you're supposed to be doing, irregardless of what they do to you. And I thank her for it even now. So I hope, with that said, I didn't stretch it too far and belabor the issues at all. You know, it's we got a great world, great country, and we just got to do more to make it better. And please, all of us need to quit stabbing everybody in the back.
Really. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? All right. Thank you, and we will be adjourned.
Thank you for watching the Alamance County Commissioners meeting. Meetings of the Commissioners Board occur on the first and third Monday of each month in the Commissioners' Chambers at the County Office Building at 124 West Elm Street in Graham. Typically, the first meeting of the month is at 9 a.m. and the second meeting of the month is at 7 p.m. Changes to the meeting schedule will be posted on the county website at www.alamance-nc.com. The video of this meeting is broadcast on Time Warner's Public Access channel on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month at 10 p.m. You can also access this meeting through our website at www.alamance-nc.com. Please visit our website for more information about watching meetings online. For technical questions regarding this meeting's online or television broadcast, please contact our county webmaster at webmaster@alamance-nc.com. Please note that this address is for technical questions only. Questions regarding the content of Commissioners' meetings may be made to the Commissioners themselves. You can find their contact information at the county website at www.alamance-nc.com. Click on the link that says County Commissioners to learn more about our Commissioners, read minutes of past meetings, access agendas, and find other information about the County Commissioners. You can send mail correspondence to the Commissioners by sending it to the Alamance County Commissioners, 124 West Elm Street, Graham, North Carolina 27253. Again, thank you for tuning in to the Alamance County Commissioners meeting.